I like the fact that I'm working with other disciplines, other students, other JD students, and it's all about sort of a transactional togetherness to do something, which I think is important for law students to have some ability to work with others, particularly other disciplines, before they embark on a legal career.
Today on LawNext, Nicole Morris, professor in practice at Emory University School of Law and director of the TIGER program, an innovative partnership between Emory Law and the Georgia Institute of Technology that brings together students in law, business, science, and engineering to take promising ideas from the lab to the marketplace. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to LawNext, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before we begin, let me just take a moment to thank our sponsor. Mariscase is the robust practice management solution specifically tailored to workers' comp, personal injury, and criminal law. See how Mariscase can be tailor-made to fit your firm at mariscase.com. That's MERUSCASE.com. Now on to our interview with Nicole Morris. Nicole Morris, welcome to LawNext.
Hello, and thank you for having me. This is quite an honor. I've followed you on various blogs and on social media and all over the place, doing some really great recording and promoting of innovation in the law. So thank you for your work.
Well, thank you for saying that. I'm honored to speak to you. I gave the brief introduction of the TIGER program in my introduction of you, which I basically cribbed right off your website. But why don't you tell us more clearly exactly what is the TIGER program?
No, that's great. So yeah, TIGER is unique, and to my knowledge, it was the first program that paired a law school sort of content with a business school content in the same classroom. So we are partnered with Georgia Tech, the long name, the Georgia Institute of Technology, and we bring together law students, business students, and PhD students, or we've expanded a bit in the recent 2 years, and we will bring in innovators in the Atlanta area, and they work together as a team to commercialize technology. So that's somewhat of a loaded word, but basically they work together to build out a framework for taking some sort of technical innovation and bringing it to the market. So creating a business plan, looking at some of the early stage initiatives or really activities to building something and bringing it to market, like intellectual property rights and how scalable it is and things like that. So they work together for a year, and at the end, the innovator has at least some idea, some sense of what's next for actually building a company.
I'm going to circle full back to that in just a second. But before we do that, I wanted to go back and talk a little bit about your career before you took this position, because you have a really interesting professional background and had a whole career in chemical engineering before you even went to law school. So why don't you just kind of recap for us your career leading up to this point?
Yeah, sure. That's great. I have not actually talked about my timeline in a really long time. So yeah, I have an undergraduate degree in chemical engineering from Northwestern, go Wildcats, and I spent about 6 years in industry as an engineer. So I have a process engineer work experience, and I caught the bug to go back to graduate school doing some clinical trial work when I was at Eli Lilly. So I went back and got my master's in chemistry, as if having a chemical engineering degree wasn't enough. And I worked in industry after that with 3M, sort of doing a lot of the same work I do now, just on the technical subject matter expert side. And after 3 years of that, I went to law school at University of Minnesota and came out and, of course, became a patent attorney. That's our typical track for an engineering background.
Yeah.
And
What made you want to go to law school?
I thought about law school a couple of steps along my sort of undergraduate to graduate school path. I honestly wanted to broaden my understanding of of professional work. So I thought about business school versus law. I like the specialization that law provided, and I thought, there are leaders of companies, they're business owners and entrepreneurs, all who may have had some legal training in their experience, sort of portfolio and profile. And I thought it provided the best funnel for opportunities on the at the end point versus getting into something different.
So you went to law school, and what did you do when you got out of law school?
So yeah, when I came out of law school, I followed the path like most recent law grads. I went to a law firm in Minneapolis, and it was a boutique firm, which you don't hear much about anymore, but it was a boutique firm, IP firm, where it focused on patent prosecution only. So I started out as someone who drafted patent applications and looked at portfolio management issues on the service provider side, so to speak. And we represented a lot of university clients. So I had a chance to work on some pretty large portfolios. And then we also represented a lot of medical device clients. So I was able to see some of that work at that early stage when you're filing a patent application. And from there, I jumped ship and went on to a litigation track. So then I did patent litigation work for about 4 years at a general practice firm. So that was nice because it brought in other specializations, and you really got to see how different parts of the firm work together, from just the business lit folks to the IP lit folks to some of the transactional folks in terms of their clients had some IP disputes and things like that. And it was after that that I moved from Minneapolis to Atlanta, which then offered the opportunity to work with some local firms. And that's what gave me the chance to go from a private practice to in-house. I was a seconded attorney with Coca-Cola before I joined the company full time. And there I was managing patent counsel, where I oversaw the entire portfolio of IP for the company, in addition to a lot of transactional work. So if you're looking at licensing opportunities, or if a different business unit wanted to understand some of the agreements they had with a supplier that had an IP clause, or if there were certain technologies we wanted to protect in some of our business relationships, I got involved with a lot of that work too.
Seconded attorney, meaning your law firm basically hired you out to them. Is that what that means?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So how did you end up at Emory Law School?
Yeah, Emory was also an interesting pivot for me. So I started at Emory actually as an adjunct back in 2013. And through that, had an opportunity to get to know several members of the faculty. And when I left Coke, I reached out to one of the faculty members at Emory, just trying to think about, I really enjoyed teaching. So I was just trying to think about, how does one actually get into the academy? What does that look like? And he shared with me that one of the faculty members intended to retire, and she ran the Tiger program at Emory Law. And I knew nothing about Tiger before this sort of fateful day at lunch asking a question about the academy. And when he explained the different components of technology, of the legal part, of the business part, I thought, my background's pretty perfect for this. So let me, give it some thought. And I applied, and the rest is history, as they say.
So you didn't start the Tiger program. You stepped into it after it had already gotten started. Hey, how long had it been going before you got there?
Yeah, so the program actually started with a grant from the NSF back in 2002.
Oh.
So our first law grads that came out of the program were 2004 grads. So it's been in existence for a really long time. which was one of the amazing things when I started at Emory, that this really wonderful program just did not have, was not promoted nationally hardly at all. So that was one of the drivers for me, trying to get the word out about Tiger and what's happening at Emory.
Yeah. And I don't think we ever said that TIGER actually stands for, is an acronym for Technological Innovation Generating Economic Results. And I'm sorry you weren't there at the beginning, because I was hoping to ask how long of a conversation you guys had about coming up with the right acronym for this program, or the right name for this program.
Well, I will tell you, it's a partnership with Georgia Tech's business school. So I'm pretty convinced that they came up with the acronym, because acronyms is not something I think law professors can claim as something they do well.
Oh, law is full of acronyms. What do you mean?
Law is full of acronyms, but I don't know if the law professors all came up with them.
Yeah. So where do the ideas come from that form the basis of the projects in Tiger? Are they all coming out of Georgia Tech?
So the projects come from the PhD student's thesis. So if the Georgia Tech PhD students involved, and we also have had some Emory PhD students participate in the program, and we look for projects that have the ability to kind of fit this Tiger model, and I'll be more specific about that. So you're looking for something where the innovator clearly understands what a commercial product could look like, right? So, and it's not, it has to be this specific type of product format, but there aren't questions about whether or not the device works. So let's just take a medical device to like a blood pump or something like that, right? So there aren't questions about, we don't know if this is the right type of pump, right? They know it's the right type of pump. They know it's going to solve clearly this unmet market need, and they just need to work out, well, who would you sell it to? What does the business plan look like? Would this be a sort of brick and mortar freestanding operation, or would you want to license it out to a bigger player? Are you sure this meets the customer's need? So those are the types of questions that we're asking. We're not at the very beginning of any sort of thesis-based project, nor is it a project that, and we haven't had these projects in the program, but I guess in theory you could. But some of the pharmaceutical, drug compound type of initiatives, where you might have someone in a program for like 5 or 6 years getting their PhD, we typically don't have a lot of projects that have that long of a timeline. It's usually a mechanical or computer science or electrical or biomed, where at about year 4, the PhD student steps in, or if it's an innovator who's like a postdoc or somebody like that, they've completed their PhD studies and they're coming back to us.
And is this a purely academic exercise, or are you actually are the students actually helping to take these products to market?
It is purely an academic exercise. It becomes sort of post-academic when the innovator or now Dr. So-and-so, when she decides after completing the Tiger program, she'll start her own business. So we've had graduates from the program come out of their graduate degree program and create a company to continue either building out a prototype or to continue through SBA funds and generating a company from that.
It sounds like the projects that you're talking about are mostly science-based projects. Is that fair to say? I mean, would you ever have, say, a legal technology or an access to justice project?
Yeah, so I've been trying to figure out ways to source that. That has not been the type of project that we've had in the past. So yes, you're right. So typically it's really something rooted in a NIH grant or an NSF grant or some sort of federally funded grant that is tied to engineering, biomed maybe, and something of the like. But I would love if we had some innovators who needed help with sort of these value proposition, business scaling, IP even questions to have them participate. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So you've got JD, MBA, PhD students all in this program. What are their roles? How do they work together? What do they do?
Great question. So it's like a startup, right? So everyone sort of sits in their subject matter wheelhouse to some degree as you start. What we've also been blessed to have some students who somewhat are hybrid in their thinking, right? So maybe you have someone who has a JD and is in the MBA program. So he or she understands the legal framework and then is really looking at it from the business lens. I currently have two students who have MBAs and they have come back to school to get a JD. So it's the flip of that model. But the roles are fairly defined by your degree program. So we ask the law students to look at the initial intellectual property questions. Is it patentable? If there's already a patent on file, or any of the newer sort of workings from the innovator side, would that be meaningful enough to look at a second patent application? We also look at freedom to operate in terms of, well, who else is doing something similar? Would you have any concerns about introducing a product like this to the market, and get a sense of the state of the art and freedom to operate for the innovator and for the team? And then the business students, and really the business and law students work together with this, but they'll create sort of a shell or an outline of a business plan and get a sense of what are the key sort of pieces there. And we spend a lot of time doing product validation. So we encourage them to conduct about 25 to 40 customer interviews, and really hone in on whether or not they're solving the right problem.
In sort of a design thinking kind of a way, or?
Very much so. We don't use the same nomenclature,
Yeah.
but it's the same work. Yeah.
Yeah. So of the law students who participate, who are they? Are they mostly 3Ls? How do they get chosen, or how do they get to participate in the program?
Yeah, so they are second and third year students. So no first year students, as most of the folks who probably are listening or understand the rigors of first year of law school, but they can apply in the spring of their first year and then participate the full year of their second year, or if they apply as a 2L, then they participate the full year of their third year. And I try to, so before I joined, it was mostly a paper process. So people would submit their applications. It would be reviewed by the faculty director, and selections would be made. But I realized the fall semester that I joined the faculty at Emory, it's really hard to discern whether or not this type of team-based program is appropriate and a good fit based on someone's paper application. So I started interviewing students, and I find that to be the most satisfying process for them and for me as the person doing the selection, because you get to learn really what their goals are, how they came to Emory, how they're attracted to the Tiger program, and what interests about the program, and how that will really enhance their desires in terms of what they want to do when they get out and practice law. And I've had theater majors participate, so no technical background whatsoever. She was a phenomenal student. She was also head of the Emory Law Journal that year. So she's just a really smart, brilliant person. But what I liked about getting non-technical applications is it's really someone who wants to participate, right? Because you're like, no, I understand technology is important and it's a skill and experience I don't have. Or I like the fact that it's an atypical program within sort of the construct of law school, which isn't a team sport, right?
Right.
So I like the fact that I'm working with other disciplines, other students, other JD students, and it's all about sort of a transactional togetherness to do something, which I think is important for law students to have some ability to work with others, particularly other disciplines, before they embark on a legal career. And one of the things about the pandemic that has kind of changed the nature of how we think about getting work done, it's less siloed now, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I'm sure everyone is a little fatigued about the video conferencing, but a lot of the work has become more collaborative in some way, shape, or form. And I think the Tiger program, one of the sort of unintended really benefits of it is teaching those collaboration skills and exercising that muscle while you're in law school is helpful.
Other than in addition to the collaborative skills, are students who go into this program interested in an entrepreneurial bent, perhaps, or do they, or what? Why do they want to go into this program? What do they think it's going to provide them that they don't get out of a standard law school education?
Yeah, they are. So I've had maybe one or two hang their own shingle after law school. I've had probably about half tell me that they want to work with startups, so they want to understand that startup world from this perspective. I've also had many students who are traditional intellectual property track folks, so they plan to practice either patent prosecution or IP lit, and this is a good way to sort of understand the IP rigors. I've also had several sort of like deals, right? Deal skills kind of folks who want to go into either VC work or M&A transactional practice work, and just seeing some of it from the tech early stage company startup side is exciting to them.
So most of them, though, want to practice law. They're not going out. They're not looking to go out after law school and start their startup of their own.
Yeah, Emory is an interesting law school. We don't get a lot of students like that. So there was one student who graduated last year who, oddly enough, did not do Tiger, but he actually was part of a startup while he was during his third year of law school. It was like a mapping kind of company that helped folks out west somehow. I don't have it recalling it very well to memory right now, but he came to me for advice because he was negotiating with VCs. He was writing a term sheet. He was doing all this stuff, and I'm just like, this is fascinating. But in terms of the student body as a whole, we generally get a lot of folks who are great students, but will sort of fit within an organization somewhere else, or they'll clerk and come back and do things later. Sometimes we'll have students who come through on a JD side and then decide, you know what, I really have some business skills that are useful, that I want to actually become a marketer or a deal person, and they'll go get their MBA.
Yeah. Having been through law school yourself and practiced law yourself, again, I hear you on collaboration, which is extremely important, but what are the other skills that you think you're teaching law students here that, from your perspective, that they're not perhaps getting, that other law students might not have the benefit of getting through a traditional law school career?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest skill sets that they learned through Tiger is this notion of dealing with uncertainty, right? So really getting comfortable with collecting as much data as you can, but your time frame for doing that is sometimes artificially short, but also by design short. And by that I mean you have an innovator that you're working with, who just has an idea. They don't have anything else sketched out. They're like, I have figured out that by using these compounds, we can treat, this condition. But I'm an innovator. I'm not a business person, so I don't know what business this would be applicable to. I've got some ideas about the different companies and others who might be attracted to this, but I don't know how to do customer discovery. I don't know how to do all of the other parts that are framing. So they have to sort of build this framework without having a complete roadmap. So I think the uncertainty about how to go about doing things is not something we do well in terms of teaching those soft skills in law school. You've got precedent, right? So you're reading these cases, you're looking for clues within the opinion, and it's really an exercise on interpretation, but you're not dealing with any real data and information. And then yourself building out a new analytical framework. You've got existing frameworks from all of the doctrinal courses and teachings that we provide students in law school, but there's never a take this contract, understanding and then figure out how to design, a licensing scheme and strategy, right? You're like, wait, I don't know how to do that. So there's lots of parts to it that they come in going, wait, I don't know how to do that. And I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
So, but here's what we need at the end point. You can design how you get there any way you want, right? And the beauty of sort of being in law school and, now when there's like a Google, right? Versus when I went to law school when there was not a Google, there's lots of information and resources available to you if you just ask the right question.
Yeah.
And we bring in a community in terms of like the ecosystem. So we connect them to folks. Like Georgia Tech is another really great partner for Tiger because their leadership and their institution, they're doing a lot of entrepreneurial skill support programs for both the undergrads and the graduate students. So you can kind of email someone on that institution and on that campus and say, hey, I have a team that's looking to do XYZ. Will you meet with them? And you can get some questions answered. So it's a different time, but I think that's probably, to answer your question, to go back in terms of what are they learning that's different. They're getting outside the classroom. They're learning to deal with uncertainty in a way that's meaningful and productive. And I think that's helpful.
Yeah, that's very helpful. What about the cross-disciplinary approach of this? And I guess by that I mean the idea of law students working with MBA students and PhD students. I can't think of too many law school programs in this country that do that. I can think of maybe a couple that have some aspect of that. What is the value of that for law students?
Yeah, no, that is tremendous. And I can't think of too many. I think there are a few that have started some similar stuff now.
Well, I'm thinking of like a Margaret Hagan's program at Stanford, which kind of brings together like design students and law students, or even the LawNext program at Brigham Young that brings together a little bit of some people, I think, from the engineering program and some law students together, but on a very limited basis. Yeah,
no, what I have seen from the law side in terms of the value to the JD candidates, you see the world through another lens, another academic sort of lens, and the business student, the business school training for the most part, most business schools, I think they've had it right all along in terms of the world is not siloed and no one person ever builds, great companies. You need a team.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to articulate to the team what the key drivers are. You need to sort of get out of your jargon and actually speak in a way that is translatable to everyone. And then motivate people within their different subject matter expertise to get some things done collectively. So I think for law students, one of the things about the Tiger program, it's probably the only time, at least at Emory, where their individual success depends on the success of the team. And I think that notion, getting some experience to that early is really helpful. But the program came together to bring those three disciplines together, really, quite honestly, from an academic lens. So the notion of you have all of this federally funded research, right, that just sits in the universities because the innovator is really not skilled in the way to understand the business drivers and the legal drivers, right? Mm-hmm. And the professional schools are still creating really great professionals, but only in their isolated discipline. So in order for you to get any of this university technology out, you can't just rely on everything happening at the tech transfer office. How can we help the university tech transfer office through a graduate program where these students are sort of doing all the deep dives for the university and for the innovators, and it helps them bring something better to the tech transfer office than they would have had if the innovator just came and submitted an invention disclosure.
Yeah. How many students are in the program in a given year?
So we have, let's see, each year we have about 60 total kids coming in. So
Six zero?
60.
Yeah. Oh,
Yep.
That's a big program.
Yeah. So like from the law side, though, just to be clear, because I don't want people
Yeah.
to run away with this and say, she said there's 60 law students. No.
No.
So from the law side, there's anywhere from 20 to 30. And then we will add the business and innovators to that. So to get to a class of 60, there's probably about 20-ish JD students in there, plus another 35 or so MBA students, and then the innovators, PhD students.
And what are the number of projects that those 60 or so students are working on? Is there a single project, or are they broken up into working on separate projects?
Yeah, they're broken up into teams. So it's like teams of 5. So 2 JDs, 2 business students, and 1 innovator. So anywhere from 10 to, actually more than 10. So anywhere from 12 to about 20 projects each year.
Can you give me an example of something they're working on this year?
So we are working on, so let me back up. So one of the things that's interesting, we have started with a shift where the business students and the JD students will work together starting in January. So right now I have a class of JD students and we're working with innovators at Emory. So we're working with a team of chemists who have an interesting medicinal chemistry compounds that they're looking at, trying to understand the business framework for. We're working with actually a startup who's a former Georgia Tech PhD student, and he's got this cryoablation device that he's looking at trying to get some additional sort of IP and business framework for. And then we're working with an Emory doctor that's come up with an interesting device to help dentists and protect them against COVID.
We'll continue our conversation with Nicole in just a moment, but first, this message. Do you feel fatigued from bouncing between software and need one source of truth to help you manage your firm? Mariscase is a cloud-based legal practice management system that offers a fully integrated, HIPAA-compliant, and easy-to-use case management platform that works for every law firm, regardless of size. See how Mariscase can be tailor-made to fit your firm at mariscase.com. That's MERUSCASE.com. Now back to my conversation with Nicole Morris. So how has the situation we're in at the current moment, the pandemic, changed how you're teaching this program?
Yeah. No, it has, because the program is based on face-to-face contact, right?
Yeah.
So meetings with innovators and running around Atlanta, going to Venture Atlanta and doing all these other things. So It has now required careful thought on who to invite and spend time with us on Zoom. But it has had this one silver lining. I'm no longer limited by someone getting on an airplane coming into my classroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a lawyer from Cooley coming to talk next week to one of my classes. We are going to the Science Writers Conference to hear Dr. Ruha Benjamin from Princeton talk about sort of algorithms and bias and how it impacts communities of color. So it's actually opened up the opportunity to hear from others all around the country who are doing amazing work, either on the legal law tech side or just technical folks coming in and giving us content specific to our lecture. So I mentioned tonight, I've got the former chief marketing officer from Coca-Cola. She's actually CEO at Dentsu. So that would never have happened,
Right.
but for being able to do something on a video conference platform.
Yeah. What about for you? Have you had to kind of relearn skills in order to teach in a virtual world?
Yeah, I actually, the short answer is no, not really. But I had to, so I did a Cali workshop this summer, which was fantastic. So shout out to Cali. And I had to just think about, it wasn't so much the tech as it was dealing with fatigue with tech. So I had to be mindful of, thinking about how to not position, but to packet information such that there was not as much fatigue with the content, and to either go slower, add some more asynchronous time, and again bringing like guest speakers, so it's not just me kind of spewing with my PowerPoint slides to the class, but it's other interesting content. I've looked and sourced TED Talks to use them to explain different content that I would not have done before if we were in a classroom. And I said to the students one day, I said, I think I'm going to do this more often. They were like, yeah, this is really cool. I said, you could do this in person. I could show this TED, 20-minute kind of framework. And one was like on innovation teams. There's lots of interesting content. And I think having to teach virtually and thinking about it differently this fall has opened my eyes to things that I would not have normally considered in the past.
Yeah. One of the courses that you're teaching, I think it's actually a 2-part course, is Fundamentals of Innovation. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. That's the introduction course to the Tiger program.
Yeah. How do you teach innovation? What do you cover in a course like that?
I know, right? That sounds like that should never happen in the classroom.
Right.
I totally, I get the skepticism. I do.
No. I'm not expressing skepticism at all. I'm curiosity more than skepticism.
Yeah. So the course, I haven't dictated too far from really how it was set up when the program started. So Fundamentals of Innovation is meant to break down kind of academically, thinking that innovation has some sort of maybe not really linear, because it's not at all linear, but some process, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the notion of you start with an idea. So how do you protect ideas? So that brings in a lot of the interesting intellectual property content. So we do heavy intro to IP. We do a heavy patent lecture and explain what that means. And then you now have your idea. You now have it protected. How do you compete with others? So then you bring in the business content. So we look at what's the competitive advantage that you're trying to create? What's the value proposition for this? And there's this notion of commercialization. What does that actually mean? How do you commercialize technology? And I've used some case studies from Harvard Business Review to sort of go through notions where people thought they had a great product, and there's been many a great product that has not made it or survived on the marketplace. So we look at a lot of product failures to understand, well, what went wrong? What was their strategic approach that was a misstep? And how would you do things differently? Today, we're going to have a marketing lecture. And then once you sort of turn the corner from you have your idea, you now have it protected, you now know how to compete, you look at then the other critical piece for any innovation, if you want to succeed financially, the financials from it. So we have some financial content in terms of funding, in terms of, and for the law students, I spend a little bit more time here with like P&L, like what is a P&L? Like how do we think about it from the accounting perspective? What makes sense for a business, and what are the important drivers on the financial side?
Sounds like a mini MBA course.
It is. So that's the part that when I'm selling it to law students, I tell them exactly that. I said, the best part about Tiger is you get all of the benefits of an MBA program packed into a year.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was thinking as you were describing that, because you said earlier that so many of the students who go through this, or most of the students who go through this, go into law practice. But all of those skills that you're teaching in that class are entirely adaptable and useful to a law practice, and not otherwise necessarily taught in a law school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Well, we are just about at the end of the program. I've been sitting here asking you a whole bunch of questions. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about the program that we haven't talked about, or about yourself?
Oh yeah, no, you're too kind. One of the things I'll do a selfish and shameless plug. So each year since I've been at Emory, I've convened an innovation conference. So I think we talked about it before the recording started.
Yeah.
And it was a way to do in real life what the program does for the students. So we bring together people in business and law to talk about some technology innovation or even an innovation trend. So we talked about healthcare back in 2016. We looked at the future of innovation in 2017, which is sort of a really crazy title, but it encompassed everything. It was like cyber, drone technology, 3D printing for healthcare devices. And then in 2018, we looked at blockchain. And at that time, Bitcoin was through the roof. So it was like cryptocurrency was the thing of the day. And that was really interesting. Mm-hmm. We also looked at AI in 2019. And I had speakers from Google and Microsoft, and Emory has a Center for Ethics, and we talked about a lot of the ethical implications. And then this past year, we looked at the future of the legal industry. So from the AI conference, I realized that everything is really skewing for AI applications in legal tech. So we talked a lot about what that means for legal education, what that looks like for law firms this year. And in 2021, keeping with the theme of virtual conferences, we will have a virtual gathering. But I am more focused on, and I think rightfully so, on advancing equity in innovation. So one of the things that, the summer of social unrest and sort of a reckoning with racial injustice, there's been lots of interesting content all around in terms of where we are with people of color and communities of color, impacts with the pandemic, but not looking at technology, innovation, and law in a way that the Tiger program looks at these three issues specifically. Mm-hmm. So I want to bring together a community where we're looking at how do we advance equity and innovation, and I want to look at it from the technologist side and the folks and people of color who work in innovation, in addition to the legal side. What can we do from the legal framework? So I'm still building out the content, but that's the theme. So stay tuned for more with dates and things like that. It'll probably be closer to the end of January 2021.
Yeah. I've had conversations with several guests recently on this show about the question of building diversity in the legal tech community or in the legal community more broadly. And so often their answers come back to the pipeline issue of creating the pipeline to get people into STEM training or to get people into law schools. Do you think that the Tiger program forms any part of that pipeline or enhances that pipeline in any way? Is Tiger helping to drive diversity at all, or interested diversity of those who are interested in technology and innovation in law?
Yeah, no, we are. And that's been one of my sort of passion projects and personal endeavors to make it accessible to the Black law students at Emory and to make sure that they feel welcome if they want to join, or to the Latino students or any of the students of color, that it's a space that's welcome for them, as well as innovators and others in the Atlanta community at large. So one of the things about Atlanta that I think that makes Tiger somewhat successful, we've got a lot of college communities within a fairly drivable distance, but we also have historically Black colleges here. So, one of the things that I'm hoping to do more of, and we have some loose affiliations, but I'd like to be more intentional, would be ways where we can partner with some of the historically Black colleges in town and work with the innovators on campus. One of the problems or challenges, I guess, with that is we always are focused on like hardcore technology, as you asked earlier. So we're looking at really engineering related projects versus I have an app to connect people to, a dance studio. Like that's not usually something that we spend time doing, but maybe we should, right? And one of the students in one of my classes, they actually wrote a proposal to look at how could we support the businesses of the communities of color, so where the law students would work with small businesses in the Atlanta area, just helping them do, it could be incorporation stuff or dealing with, city licensing issues, or it could be trademark issues for their IP or whatever, but getting legal services brought to the communities in a way that helps them more than is happening right now. So stay tuned. There's more coming, but I think this summer and this year, or maybe it's the pandemic, maybe it's all of the above, but it's been something that's been on my spirit. So I'm looking to do more with that going forward.
So I know that listeners can find out more information about the Tiger program at tigerinnovation.org. Where can they find out about the Innovation Conference?
Yeah, so it'll be on the website. And if your listeners are on Twitter, let's see, they could follow me.
I suspect they are.
Yes, I suspect they are too. They can follow Tiger at Emory Tiger 1. That's our Twitter feed directly. And I always forget my Twitter feed. It's like Nicole and Morris 3. I think it's got this weird little numeric digit at the end. But at Emory Tiger 1 would be the best way, because we will definitely have a pinned tweet so folks can get in.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much for taking the time to be on LawNext today. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
This was wonderful. I really am grateful for the opportunity, and I thank you for the ask.
Well, keep up the good work, and I will definitely watch for your conference and try and be there if I can.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Well, that does it for today's show. Thanks to Nicole Morris for taking the time out of her busy schedule to be with us. Thanks to Ben Ambrogi and his company Populous Radio for producing and editing today's show. And thanks to all of you for listening. Until next time, this is Bob Ambrogi.